I stood on the hill where a chimney stands still, and I thought of a man underground. The darkness and toil in the deep Devon soil, and the good life that he never found. No one's left to tell his story. Now all his labor is in vain. But if we can find life that he left behind, then Morwellham is living again.
A glance at any map today shows that Britain is dominated by an intricate network of roads and railways, the arteries of a transport system upon which our daily lives depend. How different conditions were 1,000 years ago. Roads were little more than muddy trackways, virtually unusable in the winter months, yet the need to transport goods was just as relevant then as it is today. Horse-drawn carts and strings of pack horses could be used, but they were slow and expensive. The solution was to use the waterways. A Tamar barge with a crew of 2 could carry 50 tons. To move such a cargo by road would have required 25 carts or at least 500 pack horses, and so, wherever possible, rivers were used as natural highways. Today you are at the highest navigable point on the River Tamar. Morwellham Quay developed here where a stream joined the main river, providing a handy place to haul in boats. A boat could conveniently reach the sea 23 miles away. Almost 1,000 years ago, Morwellham served as a port for the local communities, like the rich abbey of Tavistock, 4 miles away. The abbey was once sacked by a party of raiding Danes, who also found the River Tamar very convenient. Building materials for the abbey, wine for the abbot, and fish for the Benedictine monks passed through here until tin was discovered on the edge of Dartmoor near Tavistock about the year 1100. This valuable metal was smelted with charcoal. The very heavy silver-coloured blocks were shipped out from Morwellham. But apart from this early mining trade, for centuries this was a peaceful place, until the Industrial Revolution began. Suddenly there was a tremendous demand for metals of all kinds. The hills around here were extremely rich in minerals: tin, lead, copper, arsenic, even manganese. Prior to the 19th century, mines were small and relatively few, but then after 1800, well, just look at it, scores of mines. Some smaller mines were close to Morwellham, but the bigger mines developed around Tavistock and on the edge of Dartmoor 4 miles away. Morwellham Quay was the nearest convenient port. Nature had omitted to supply the huge quantities of coal needed to smelt the minerals. So it was to South Wales, where coal and industry were abundant, that the ores were shipped from Morwellham. It's strange to think that we owe the present-day rural character of the West Country to that shortage of coal. The steep hills and valleys of the southwest may look picturesque today, but 200 years ago they were a formidable barrier. Dragging great quantities of heavy ore from the mines to the port was a real problem, but once again water transport provided the solution: a man-made river. In 1803, John Taylor, a gifted mining engineer, started constructing the Tavistock Canal. To reach Morwellham Quay, the canal had to skirt the hills between here and Tavistock. At one point it had to slice right through a steep hill. It took 13 years of hard labour to tunnel through the rock. Even then, due to the formation of the land, the canal ended high up above Morwellham. To reach the port below, a steeply sloping, inclined plane railway was constructed. Water falling from the canal drove a water wheel to power a winch to lower and raise the railway trucks. At the bottom, a network of sidings fanned out around newly enlarged quays and docks. Morwellham literally doubled in size. Even so, this rich flow of ore was just a prelude to the great flood which was to follow. 1844, The greatest copper lode in Europe was discovered almost on Morwellham's doorstep, the biggest strike in the world at the time. A new company called the Devonshire Great Consolidated Copper Mining Company, Devon Great Consols for short, was formed to mine the ore. Within just 1 year, a £1 share was selling at £800. The Duke of Bedford, who owned the patch of land on which the mine was developed, earned over £10 million by present-day values in royalties alone. The mine was only 4 miles from here, but it lay in a completely different direction from the canal. So, the problem of overland transport returned with a vengeance. In 1856, the mine owners constructed a railway to Morwellham Quay. It terminated, as the canal had done previously, at the top of that same steep hill above the port. A second inclined plane railway was built, though this time the trucks were lowered by a steam-driven winch. They ran out onto raised wooden stagings so that all could be dumped at convenient points. Extensive quays and a massive new dock were built. Morwellham Quay had yet again doubled in size. This photograph was taken in 1868. What had once been just a handy place to haul in a small boat was now a bustling enterprise known as the greatest copper port in Queen Victoria's empire. 300 people lived here, and ships from all over the world brought the vital supplies needed to work the mines and took away the cargoes of ore. Sailors from as far afield as Russia and Canada walked the tiled quays. As the port grew, so did the use of machinery powered by the great volume of water tumbling down the hill from the Tavistock Canal. The ingenious Victorian engineers used every ounce of that water power for grinding manganese ore, driving water pumps, threshing corn at the farm, and to haul limestone from Tamar barges to the top of a set of lime kilns where it could be made into fertilizer. Valuable though water power was, the port was mostly powered by human effort. The men who loaded the ships earned 1 penny per ton for this back-breaking work. The women and children who swept the quays, about 5p per day. But perhaps hardest of all was the lot of the men who toiled beneath the ground.
All the farmers go around the field, their legs tied up with straw. The miners, they go underground and never miss a blow. Oh, a mining we will go, my boys, a mining we will go. With picks and shovels in our hands, a mining we will go. We all worked at Willesey, and when the bell was scattered, we all lived in the engine house and made the best of that. Oh, a mining we will go, my boys, a mining we will go. With picks and shovels in our hands, a mining we will go.
Their work was hard, dangerous and filthy, but appallingly badly paid. The wages were totally dependent on the price of copper ore. When the ore prices fell, as they did several times towards the end of the century, the miners and their families were often brought to the point of starvation. As copper deposits began to run out, the prosperity and wealth from which these men gained so little was also threatened. So, at Devon Great Consols, arsenic ore was mined instead. This was treated by roasting and grinding on the surface of the mine and provided half the world's supply of the deadly white poison which was used in insecticides and weed killers. Visitors to the mine were told with great relish that there was enough arsenic stored at Devon Great Consols to poison every man, woman and child in the world. Although arsenic production gave the great mine an extra 20 years of life, it was never rich and prosperous again. When the price of arsenic slumped at the end of the century, as the price of copper had done 30 years earlier, there was no way out, and Devon Great Consols was forced to close. The effect was catastrophic. Thousands of miners were forced to emigrate. Morwellham Quay suffered a blow from which it could not recover. The port had been at the mercy of the prosperity of Devon Great Consols. The arrival of the railways to the region had forced the Tavistock Canal to close, robbing Morwellham of most of its other trade. The quays fell into disrepair, the docks silted up, and the place became almost forgotten, a bramble-covered ruin. By 1969, nearly 1,000 years of bustling activity had in one short lifetime been reduced to this.
But then in 1970, the Morwellham and Tamar Valley Trust was formed to conserve the historic and natural resources of the Tamar Valley. The Trust's first task was to rediscover the port. Their intention was to transform neglected ruins and recreate Morwellham Quay as it was when it reached its peak in the mid-19th century. In 2010, the BBC filmed the Edwardian Farm series at Morwellham Quay, bringing new life to the port. A small train takes you underground to see firsthand the harsh working conditions of mid-19th century miners. Our resident potter, blacksmith and cooper will demonstrate their crafts, and our team of living historians provide talks about the assayer, rope making, the village school, child labour and domestic life. Morwellham Quay is lived in today by many people who have no connection whatsoever with the centre, so do please respect their privacy.
I stood on the hill where a chimney stands still, and I thought of a man underground. The darkness and toil in the deep Devon soil, and the good life that he never found. No one's left to tell his